former vice president and presidential hopeful in the 2023 general election in Nigeria, Alhaji Atiku Abubakar, at the weekend said what Nigeria needs after 7 years of ineptitude of President Muhammadu Buhari administration is a leader who brings together diversity and unity and encourage people to respect and accept each other despite their differences. The former vice president said Nigeria needs a unifier, not a pacifier. He further reacted to the issue of zoning, saying that the Southeast should focus on what cannot lie, which is its record. This was just as Catholic Bishop of Sokoto Diocese, Bishop Matthew Hassan Kuka, yesterday accused President Buhari's administration of having divided the Nigerian people on the basis of ethnicity, religion, and in whatever way, in any way that has never been witnessed before in the country's history. In his Easter message, Kuka said that the greatest challenge for Nigeria is not the 2023 elections, but the unity of the country. He called on religious leaders to deploy their moral authority and avoid schemes of politicians and their material enticement. Okay, a lot to break down. Atiku Abubakar is speaking, Bishop Kuka is speaking.
Yes, I'll start with Bishop Kuka. I think that it's important to always remember exactly what the role of the clergy is in society and take his comments within that context. You'll recall last year, the presidency responded quite angrily about his comments that he made last year. I think he described Nigeria then as a killing field, and that really went down like a lead balloon. But it is part of his job to speak truth to power. So I hope that this year's message is received in better faith, pardon the pun. You'll recall what has happened in England as well over the Easter holiday with the Archbishop of Canterbury talking in really critical terms about that plan to sort of cite the UK's political asylum program in Rwanda. And he said that that's ungodly. And there has been a statement released to, rebut that from the British Home Office, and Conservative MPs are criticizing him. But that is a part of his job. Even the Pope's Easter message referred to wars all over the world, especially Ukraine. He called it an Easter of war. The church does not exist in a vacuum. The church cannot bury its head in the sand like an ostrich and pretend not to be aware of what's going on. So I do think that those comments from Bishop Kuka are helpful and should be taken as such. As for the Vice President, Atiku Abubakar, I was reading his interview in This Day, which is in today's papers. It was a very interesting interview, and he talks about the fact that PDP should focus more on winning than zoning, and that's becoming a common refrain that we've been hearing. He did acknowledge the fact that the Southeast feels marginalized, but said that his own personal record shows that he doesn't take the attitude to the Southeast. So I guess from that we can infer that if he does become president of Nigeria, he'll try and be more inclusive. But will that convince a lot of people who maintain that after 8 years of President Buhari, it's absolutely unacceptable for the presidency to go back to the north, even if it's a northerner who is as detribalized as an Atiku Abubakar? It's irrelevant. The fact is that we should not have another northerner. That is a very strong school of thought that exists. And I also found it interesting that he commented on the age issue, the fact that he's 77. He compared himself to maybe a Ronald Reagan, who became American president in his 70s and made great strides. One other thing I found interesting in his interview was his point that terror has never been defeated by the military, that it's always about negotiation. And we've been talking, especially in light recently, of the attack on the Abuja-Kaduna train and the fact that innocent Nigerians have been abducted, and that we do not negotiate with terrorists, stance that really originated from America. That was Richard Nixon made that off-the-cuff comment in the 70s, and I'm sure he never thought till today he's still going to be parroted. People are saying that the federal government should not negotiate with terrorists, but at the cost of human lives. So really, I like that point that he's trying to, put forward about the sort of futility of trying to only have a military approach. And we do need to be thinking out of the box about this issue.
Okay, let's start with Bishop Matthew Hassan Kuka, Bishop of the Sokoto Diocese. Now, when he delivered his Easter homily, and he said, Nigeria is broken. Our hearts are broken. In fact, he more or less said that, look, the Buhari administration has not done anything. In that homily, he was saying that the only thing that has worked in Nigeria is corruption. And he talked about the many ills afflicting the country. And of course, the reaction has been a very quick rebuttal from spokespersons of the government to dismiss the Catholic bishop as a man who is always censorious, always looking for faults, and always condemning the Buhari administration. Whereas, according to them, he was very close to the PDP administration, which, in their reckoning, created many of the problems that the APC is trying to deal with. But one thing to note here is Bishop Matthew Hassan Kukah's consistency. There are persons in the past who have called for his arrest. There are persons in the past who had called for his expulsion from Sokoto State, from Sokoto, where he's the bishop of the Catholic Diocese. There are persons who have even said, look, worse things about him. But he has remained very consistent. And in his sister homily, he just summoned the courage to accuse the administration of all kinds of things. I've seen one comment, people say, in fact, he should be arrested for using the pulpit to speak in that kind of manner. Now, this is coming shortly after the Islamic cleric, Sheikh Nuru Khalid, who at the Akko Legislative Quarters Mosque said more or less the same thing. The General Overseer of the Redeemed Church of Christ, Daddy Gio, Pastor Enoch Adeboye, has said more or less the same things. The Archbishop of the Catholic Pro Cathedral in Abuja, His Eminence, Ignatius Kaigama, had said more or less the same things. And the thing to note here is that when you find, clerics, whether Muslim or, Christian or traditional, religion worshippers beginning to speak up, it's an indication of something, that has gone terribly wrong with the country. I mean, Bishop Kukah was saying, look, we are almost at the edge of the precipice. The gentleman that we're going to interview today, the Reverend, he himself is saying more or less the same thing. He's saying we have a dry truth in this country, and it will be necessary to give us cold water. Okay, the analogy may be a bit strange to some of us, but at least he's saying that the people are thirsty, and they need some kind of relief. So you find all these religious leaders saying the same thing. And what they are saying is a reflection of how the people feel. The only people who do not accept this argument are the people in government. And we've been through this route before. You recall that in 1992, 1993, thereabouts, after the annulment of the June 12 election, some of the people who went to the barricades, they were religious leaders, both Muslim and Christians. Bishop Bonigi at the time, Reverend Adebiyi at the time, Cardinal John Onayekon at the time, this same Father Matthew Kukah at the time, Father George Husani also at the time, Father Enwenem, Father John Uba Ofe, the Catholic Church Bishops' Conference in particular, led the struggle on behalf of the people. I think rather than dismiss people like, Bishop Matthew Hassan Kukah, government should listen to what he's saying, because his words carry weight. He's a man who is very gifted with oratory and who can also write very well. So he has the skills. So abusing him will make no difference, because he will still be part of the persons who will write the history of one administration after the other because of his intellectual gift. And I understand that he's going to be our guest on this program tomorrow. So, and knowing Father Kukah very well, he's going to repeat the offense. I hope nobody arrests him for exercising his freedom of speech and standing in defense of the people of Nigeria whom he says are suffering, who cannot travel by air, who cannot go by road, who cannot feed, and who are surrounded, by doubt, fear, anxiety ahead of the 2023 general elections. Well, as for the former Vice President Atiku Abubakar, well, I think the significance of that is conversation that has been referred to is that, well, this day newspaper now has started a presidential interview series. And I think that in itself as a concept is a very good idea. we've said repeatedly on this program that we need to hear from these aspirants. We need to know what their plans are. We need to know not just about their record. We need to know what they have in stock for the country. Now, I think that in that interview, yes, former Vice President Atiku Abubakar was quite defensive. He was reacting more to certain issues that could stand in his path. He says, no, he may have tried to be president of Nigeria more than once, more than twice, but that does not mean, in his own estimation, that he failed. Rather, he shows his commitment to Nigeria. He addressed the issue that, maybe he's working on, some prediction by some marabouts. He said, no, that's a myth. But, of course, in Nigeria, so many, aspirants tell you that, they heard the voice of God and that they are being pushed by the voice of God, or that some people are the ones pushing them. But at least one good thing in his own conversation, in his interview, is that, he says he's interested. He wants to unify Nigeria. He was talking about unity in diversity, and that what Nigeria needs is not a policy of pacification, but competence, to replace incompetence. Okay? And I see over the weekend in the Easter messages, the message attributed to former Vice President Atiku Abubakar, and even the one attributed to Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu. At least there was a meeting of minds at that level. That something is not working here. And when I saw what was attributed to Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu, I was shocked. I said, the national leader of the APC is beginning to criticize the APC administration. And this morning I was looking for, a disclaimer that no, he didn't say so. I've not seen it yet. Maybe it will come later in the day, but at least what I read was that he is just as critical of the current administration as some other politicians. So the issue is no longer about religion. Although Bishop Matthew Kuka says the country is divided by religion, by ethnicity, and by region. But it looks like across the divide, an emerging consensus is that Nigeria is not working and that you need a competent person to lead it. Of course, it's natural for former Vice President Atiku Abubakar to sell his own candidacy. And he addressed the issue of the Southeast. He says the Southeast people should not be led by any lie, that they should look at his record, his relationship with them. Well, I don't think the Southeast Easterners will be convinced by that. They are not looking at relationships. I know former Vice President Atiku Abubakar once married an Igbo woman, right? So I don't think that the idea of Igbo presidency is based on in-law hypotheses or calculations. It's based on the concrete fact that the people of the Southeast are saying that this is about fairness, this is about equity, this is about justice. Only yesterday, Chief Anekwe, former Speaker of the House of Reps, was telling me on another program that, look, this is about fairness and justice, and that every other person should just summon the courage and step down for Igbos. But when Vice President former Vice President Atiku Abubakar says they should look at his relationship with them, well, I don't know whether being an in-law is going to be a major issue in this matter. I don't think Igbos are looking at bedroom connections. They are looking at issues of fairness, equity, and justice.
Right, that's all on News Headline. We'll take a short break. When we return, we'll have Rotus, we'll have Micah, we'll have Adesua, and Aaron to give updates on Africa, global business, COVID-19, and sporting activities across the globe. Stay with us.
Welcome back to the morning show here on Arise News. Now for Global Business Update, Michael Wilson joins us from London. Good morning, Mr. Wilson.
Good morning. Happy Easter again, Easter Monday. Asia markets largely slipped overnight. Basically, they got some good news on Chinese economic data. The Nikkei fell 1.5%, though, not doing very well at all. Shares of fast retailing declined nearly 2%. The Chinese stocks were actually quite encouraged, but although growth was slightly outstripped forecast, retail sales did not, which means that their anti-COVID policy, particularly as far as Shanghai is concerned, and if you think about it, what they've been doing to American investors is saying that this is an area which is 3 times the size of New York in terms of area and population. So it's actually very, very serious indeed. And they didn't get that. China did not get the stimulus that it might have been expecting. The central bank kept medium-term loan rates unchanged at 2.85%. Let's turn our attention to Sri Lanka. We've been talking about how it's not doing very well as far as its economy is concerned. It's going to meet the IMF. In fact, it might be meeting them as we speak right now, talking about how to repair some of the damage that the pandemic's done to that particularly hit country. Economic mismanagement's quite another thing as well, which has hit it over the years. Russia, the war there cutting into global auto production. Auto industry watchers are actually saying that it's cutting production and sales forecasts for the next 2 years as a result of the kind of shortages which are coming out of this, not the shortages which are being made by the conflict itself. S&P Global particularly worried about that. Let's turn our attention to the United States, and it's a big week for reporting this week. Futures down about 150 points. People are still worried about Ukraine, Federal Reserve, interest rates, all those kind of usual things. But if you look at what's actually coming up this week, it needs to be looked at very, very closely to find out how companies are actually dealing with increased costs. We've got Bank of America, we've got IBM, we've got Procter & Gamble, we've got Travelers, Dow Inc., Johnson & Johnson, American Express, and Verizon, and not least of which, of course, Netflix and Tesla also reporting. United Airlines, American Airlines, and Alaska Air, CSX, and Union Pacific. So that's a real broad swathe of companies actually reporting this week, and we'll get some idea of how the American economy and how companies are coping with those increasing costs. As far as the EU is concerned, Germany's conundrum with its rather complicated ties with Russia is right at the fore about this now. Since Russia invaded Ukraine, many German politicians have publicly admitted that they got a closeness to Putin, and a closeness to Russia. They got it wrong. They're apologizing for what they've done in the past, particularly the SPD, now turning a complete U-turn as far as armament is concerned in that country as well. The UK braced for a period of stagflation now, pretty obviously, soaring inflation, wages not keeping up with that. Also also the cost of living rising. Cost of living the worst outlook since the 1950s. UK households are also cancelling their television subscriptions. A lot of them, including getting out of things like Disney Plus, Apple TV, and so on. And also remember that in this country, paying £159 for £159 for a license fee, and that's causing younger people. So 58% of households which do have streaming television just have the one channel now. The UK travel chaos, was talking about this last week before Easter, didn't really get any better. The UK government is proposing to speed up training of crews, so they will be security vetted and be trained at the same time. That is none of the trade bodies have commented so far on this, but that's the proposal. Oil slightly up as a result of shortages, a bit of a scare from Libya this morning, and OPEC is not producing what it said it's short by. It's only about 57,000 barrels a day, as opposed to the 258,000 IEA, and IEA's worried about that. And of course, we're losing because of the Russia-Ukraine war. And gold actually coming back very, very slightly, not quite hitting that $2,000 an ounce level, but not far off. That's the global view this morning.
Right. So, Michael, I'd like to talk about the cost of living crisis in the UK. It is obvious that this is going back to Second World War kind of levels, because when you talk about the 50s, it was just out of the Second World War. Things were really bad then. I mean, if you remember that time, that's the era of rationing. That was the era where meat was rationed in the UK. And this is appalling. What is that? What's going to be the long-term solution? Because it's obvious the Tory party isn't even thinking about a solution to all of these problems happening in the UK. Secondly, I'd like to talk a little bit about America on the other side of the pond and, the prospects for the American economy, because it looks as though the British economy and the American economy are facing almost the same thing. High inflation rates. Biden says his Build Back Better plan will put money in the hands of people, but it's not looking like it. It's just more pain to people in these two economies. America has an election coming up. Would it lead to an internal implosion? Will the Republicans take the midterm elections? Obviously, I don't know what Boris Johnson is still doing as Prime Minister in Britain now, because the people don't want him any longer with all the scandal and everything. So what is happening amongst these two big economies?
Every economy in the world is suffering pain at the moment, not least of which the United States and the United Kingdom. United States has a much stronger labour market, as the figures show, than the UK has. I think the UK is in real problems. It doesn't really matter about which politicians are in charge. The headwinds which are facing it are rising prices, and until people actually say we're going to take the pain and upon themselves to try to reduce energy consumption and so on, I can't see any country in the world escaping this kind of thing, writ large, particularly in democracies that publish their results on a regular basis. It's beyond politics. It's really a question of the world settling down. However, against that, I wouldn't gainsay the ability of business people, particularly small businesses, to be very agile about this, to continue to provide employment, to continue to supply solutions to the problems which are facing the world at the moment. But I think you're right. Of course, the United States and the UK are suffering these kind of problems, but every economy around the world is in exactly the same boat.
Well, quickly, two things. Let's start with Elon Musk and the Twitter board. Twitter board has approached the Securities and Exchange Commission with a defense plan to prevent Elon Musk from a hostile takeover with his bid of $43 billion that he wants to put on the table to take over Twitter. And, people are saying, well, this poison pill strategy, as it is otherwise called, is it likely to work? Particularly with, Elon Musk tweeting over the weekend saying, love me tender, and threatening to go directly to the shareholders to see if he can take over Twitter and bypass the board. And now the board now is trying to defend itself to prevent anybody at all from acquiring anything above a 15% stake in the company. So who is going to win? Who is going to lose out? And then as for Sri Lanka, well, serious crisis there. With food prices, fuel prices going up, cost of living crisis going through the roof. As of this morning, Sri Lanka, according to Fitch and S&P, is already, in default in terms of its, bonds, international bonds payment commitments. Now, a meeting has been scheduled with the IMF. Now, what is likely to come out of that? What's really next for Sri Lanka? Now that the new central bank governor is even asking for donations. I don't know how you run a country with a GoFundMe, that people should donate to help Sri Lanka. And also, Sri Lankans that are abroad are being asked to send their money back home. How about this three-pronged strategy to rescue Sri Lanka? Which will work best? The IMF pill, or donations, or repatriation of funds by Sri Lankans in diaspora?
Neither of the last two options will work if you don't have confidence in the government there, and certainly they've shown an enormous amount of mismanagement over the years. If I was Sri Lankan, I would not be sending money back to, because I have no idea how it would be used. I think the key to this is the IMF. They've spurned the IMF's help. The IMF's blessing is a very mixed one, as you know. Many African countries got involved with the IMF, and now they wish they hadn't, because the IMF says one thing and it says, yes, everything's going to be fine, and then it starts to impose very, very stringent regulations. Think of the Greek crisis not that many years ago. Think of what they tried to do to the Greek economy. They didn't succeed. But the IMF can be very, very how can I put this, tin-eared when it comes to actually dealing with countries and not actually sympathising with their ills, of which Sri Lanka has a great deal at the moment. So no, I don't think repatriation of funds is the answer. I think their only course of action now is to recalibrate the country, to start export. Let's hope that tourism starts again, because that was one thing that they didn't actually have. As far as Elon Musk is concerned, again, I repeat what I've said about this previously. You know, if I were the SEC, I would have got involved a long time ago. You can't really blame the board of Twitter using this poison pill defense, which basically is a dilution of the value of shares and offers the shares to existing shareholders at a reduced kind of price, which actually will probably stop, and it stays in practice until April the 14th next year. So it's actually quite long. I suspect that Musk will huff and puff and all the rest of it. It's good in a sense that just because you're the richest person in the world, you can't do as you like. But I think to conduct oneself on Twitter in the way that he has been doing is not really what I would expect a big corporate company to do. Now, finally on that, does Twitter know where it's going with free speech? You see, it doesn't have free speech anymore because it's clamped down on trolls, it's clamped down on propaganda, and it's clamped down on false news. Now, free speech, of course, includes all those kind of things. Free speech is extremely expensive and very, very dangerous, I would have thought. And as we were saying on Friday, I think Twitter needs to navigate that. It's got plenty of problems. Musk will either disappear or plan something else. If I were the SEC, I'd be involved very heavily in this.
Well, thank you, Mr. Wilson. Now to our dependable Rotus Adiri, who's here to give us an African business update. Good morning, Rotus.
Good morning, Tundu. Good morning, Frank. Good morning, Doctor. Good morning to all our viewers. We begin with inflation, which was inflation figures were released late Friday afternoon for Nigeria. 15.92% was the print year-on-year for March, climbing from 15.7% in February. It's on the rise again. This is the highest print that we've had so far this year. Food prices, the diesel issues floating in there into the basket. I think we can take a look at the chart here. We'll see year-on-year inflation compared to the see if we can, yeah, there we go. So 15.92 from 15.7. Food inflation climbing again, 17.2. Funny enough, March of 2021, it was 22%. So last year is where Ghana is right now. Core inflation, did see a slight deceleration there, 13.9 from 14. Urban, rural, same thing. Month on month, which is more accurate gauge, that's also rising 1.74% from February. Food inflation, look at food inflation, almost 2%, 1.99. Core inflation, slight deceleration, urban and rural as well. If you look at the chart, you'll see the trajectory from where we were in March of last year, 18.17. Then we had that 8-month deceleration. But now, as you can see, we're climbing again. So March 15.92 from 15.7 in February, from 15.6 in January. There was a slight deceleration from December to January, but inflation is on the climb. This is, squeezing disposable income for the average Nigerian. You've got the pass-through effects of the exchange rates. If for investments, I've always tell any folks that come to ask me about investment advice, if you are not earning up to 15.9% on your investment, be it from your savings, bonds, treasury bills, stocks, or whatever, then your real rate of return is negative. So across all fronts, you've got to have some kind of portfolio reallocation to where you can beat inflation. To the World Bank, Shubham Chuduri, who is the country director for Nigeria, was saying that he was in an interview with, I think it was the Punch newspaper, which was just published yesterday, saying that the World Bank cannot dictate policy to Nigeria, and he was referring to fuel subsidies. basically say, I mean, he talked about a whole wealth of things, including very interesting analogy he used for debt. But he said, look, Nigeria is policy independent. All we can do is advise. We've given them enough advice as far as what to do about fuel subsidies, but the nation will do what the nation will do. In fact, we have a pretty interesting panel coming up on the Global Business Report that includes the World Bank, Marco Hernandez, lead economist, along with a number of other players in the oil and gas sector, talking later on today for a full hour. So I encourage everybody to tune in at 11 a.m. A full hour on the 4 trillion naira allocation for subsidies. So the World Bank is saying, hey, we did the best we can. We'll just continue to advise. It's up to Nigeria to listen to us. We go to Kenya. Kenya Airways, another bailout, 36 billion shillings. Although this was in the budget, though, they did plan this out when the supplementary budget and all the other things were being put together. So far, in the last 12 months, this 36 billion shilling bailout will push total support for Kenya Airways to about 56 billion shillings. If you convert that to dollars, I think that's about $5 billion. That's gone to the airline. They're saying it's a strategic investment. The Kenyan government will not let this airline fail. They've got salaries to pay, they've got utility bills, they've got plane maintenance, a whole number of things. But it is the largest state bailout of any company in Kenya, across the board. But they continue to pump the money in there. So South Africa, I saw something very interesting while looking at the South African rand. The South African rand, moving to South Africa now, has strengthened since the Ukraine war. There's a chart, I think we have that chart. If you take a look at it, this was about 1 a.m. in the morning. So the red arrow there at the top is where it was trading at about 16 rand to the dollar. That was about around December. The blue arrow right before the green arrow comes all the way down. And for our folks watching, going down is an appreciation. It's strengthening. So that was when the Ukraine war started. Around there, it was trading at about, about 15 rand to the dollar. It's now gone down to about 14.5. Number of reasons. One, you've seen capital inflows going into the South African Stock Exchange and their bonds. The Johannesburg Stock Exchange is a $1 trillion exchange, the most capitalized exchange as far as market cap is concerned on the African continent. Also funds going into bonds. Also, tourism, with the removing of the restrictions, COVID restrictions, you've seen more South Africans who couldn't travel before. Actually, well, I guess they have to stay within their own country and travel around there. But now you've seen foreigners coming in. I mean, look no further than Michael Wilson, who was in Cape Town for about, 2-3 weeks on holiday. For any foreign visitors coming in, they're going to demand the rand, and that's going to increase its appeal. Also, I mean, if you look at the emerging market baskets, Turkey is in there, Brazil is in there, Russia is in there. They've all had their own issues. And so that has made the rand more attractive compared to other currencies in the emerging market basket. And then the increase in rates by the South African Reserve Bank. When you increase rates, you make it strengthens your currency by bringing in foreign inflows into the nation. And I think it was either Moody's or Standard & Poor's. I mean, there's still 2 grades below investment grade, but they've raised them from negative to stable. So it's a bunch of mining, sorry. And then also, yes, commodities, the commodity rally that we've seen, like palladium and other things. Mining is so huge for the South African economy. So they've still got issues. Unemployment is pretty high. But when your currency strengthens, I mean, this is at 14.5. When your currency is this strong, it absorbs shocks, for the average citizen, keeps your purchasing power strong, and I thought it was pretty interesting. So for the rand, since that time.
I mean, it's a good thing you talked about it, because South Africa has been through a lot economically.
Lots.
I mean, the economy was bleeding a couple of months ago, or this time last year.
Yeah.
The economy was in dire straits, and I'm excited for them that it's coming up. So it shows that it's actually possible when all the right things align. And I want to segue that into Nigeria.
Yeah.
It shows that when you look for alternative means of getting forex into your economy, then the economy starts to reflect.
Yeah.
One area I feel Nigeria has not even scratched the surface on, just like South Africa is doing, is tourism.
Right.
We need to build a tourism sector. I think what we have now is like child's play, it's like Chucky.
The doll.
Yeah, it's like Chucky.
Yeah.
We don't have a tourism. So we build a tourism sector, get some more foreign revenue in, look at our mineral sector,
Badly underinvested.
Badly underinvested, but it can be capitalized if we know what we're doing.
Right.
Rather than the Chinese come to take all our resources away and, steal them off away, and you're having blood minerals in the north that are fueling wars and insurgents by bandits and all of that. Insurgents by bandits. Develop that. 3, look at how to capitalize small businesses, because one of the things South Africa too is doing, is those incentivization they have done for small businesses in South Africa.
Yep.
And they've helped them to reflate. During the COVID period, they did pump some money into them because, see, if small businesses thrive, then definitely they can employ people and the economy becomes buoyant. I mean, the magic trick Germany always uses, and everybody praises Germany for the stable economy, is what they call the Mittelstand, the small businesses, just like the Koreans, the Shables, and the likes. So if you can do all those things, and I hope we're taking notes here, then we can just bolster the Naira. So it has shown that it is possible that we can gain against the dollar if we put the right policies in place, if we do the needful for small businesses and help them scale effectively and, remove the regulatory bottleneck. If I was leader of this country, I'll call every business leader in the room and say, run wild.
Yeah.
Go do it.
Well,
Just
quickly, let me comment on the interview with the World Bank man in Nigeria, Mr. Chowdhury.
Yeah.
I think a lot of truth-telling in that interview with Punch. And some of the things that he said in that interview that resonated very clearly is that Nigeria is a country with great potential, but that potential has not been realized, which I think is a very good point. He made a point that, look, with regard to infrastructure, yes, we need infrastructure, but we don't have the revenue to be able to do it. 2, he was asked a question about subsidy. Usually we say, it's the Bretton Woods institutions that are recommending removal of subsidy to Nigeria. He said, no, we don't have the ability to dictate that. It's Nigeria's choice, okay? Because now we have moved from 442 billion to 4 trillion naira proposal. I think about 3.5 trillion was eventually approved by the National Assembly. And he says that is going to come with fiscal cost. He was asked whether, private refineries, the Dangote refinery will solve the problem. He said, well, the private refineries, they have the choice, either to sell at global price or to sell at a subsidized rate. Price. But even when you sell at a subsidized rate, then, of course, government will have to pick up the cost. But the choice is for the owner of the private business to make one choice one way or the other, whatever is convenient. So, that immediately debunks all this thinking that, if we have private refineries, then our problem would disappear. Maybe there will be value added at the domestic level, but, Dangote refinery is going into business. So I think it's an interview that is useful in terms of analyzing some of the challenges we face in Nigeria. But the overall implication of all this is that we are in very dire straits. Chowdhury is not a priest like Matthew Hazan Kuka. He's not a priest like the priest that we will talk with, we'll discuss with later today. But he's also more or less saying that things are not going too well here. And don't blame the World Bank. Don't blame us. You guys have to make policy choices. Right. And it's a matter of policy. So it comes down to the issue of leadership. I was going to ask you another question, but, I raised another question, but we don't seem to have time. So I'll leave it, maybe tomorrow.
I didn't get the chance to say anything. I know you're crushed, Roses.
Very
Never
much.
mind.
You're starting tomorrow. Tunde goes first. All right, thanks, guys.
You do the WhatsApp message again?
Yes, I'll send you a message.
For updates on COVID-19 pandemic, Adeso Omoro is here with us. Great to have you, Adeso. How's it going? How are you? Happy Easter.
Very well. Happy Easter. Thank you so much, Rufai. Good morning. Another WhatsApp message to Rotus. Good morning, Tunde.
Good morning.
Good morning, Dr. Batty. Well, for many Christians around the world, this weekend marked the very first time since 2019 that they could gather in person to celebrate Easter Sunday. As many countries, of course, to celebrate one of the holiest days in the Christian calendar for the year. This is, of course, as many countries start to ease restrictions put in place to curb the spread of the virus first imposed in 2019. Well, according to the Johns Hopkins University, we now have over 504 million infections, at least 6.1 million casualties from this pandemic, and at least 11 billion vaccine doses administered across countries and territories of the world. China, where it all began, is at the moment struggling to contain new infections despite its very controversial zero COVID-19 policy. But let's look at what's happening in Nigeria with vaccination. As at April 16th, according to health officials in their latest release, in the 36 states and the Federal Capital Territory, 21.1 million eligible persons targeted, or 18.9%, have been partially vaccinated in Nigeria, with another 14.1 million, or 12.7%, fully vaccinated against the COVID-19. Well, away from that, we have a new study that says global COVID deaths on weekends have been higher compared to weekdays during this pandemic. Researchers accepted that reporting delays could be a contributing factor, but said that a shortfall in clinical staffing, capacity, and experience at weekends are also likely to play a huge role. Overall, the average number of global COVID deaths from the virus were 6% higher on the weekends compared to the weekdays. Now, these experts are from the University of Toronto in Canada, and they analyzed the deaths reported to the World Health Organization COVID-19 database between March 7th, 2020 and March 7th, 2022. Their findings suggest that this problem is not resolving despite improved health systems performance and awareness over the course of the pandemic in different countries around the world. That is troubling. And, well, it's not the first time, but Scotland's First Minister, Nicola Sturgeon, has come under fire for violating her own COVID-19 rules, even if it was for a few seconds. A video posted on social media showed that the First Minister was not wearing a mask during a local election campaign visit at a barber's shop in South Lanarkshire on Saturday. And the police have now confirmed that they have received the complaint, which is now being investigated. It is legally required for people to wear face coverings in many indoor settings in Scotland until today, when they now become guidance. She later posted a footage of the visit on her own Instagram account with her mask on. And that's why I said it was for a few seconds, according to her spokesperson. And finally, this morning, South Korea will lift almost all social distancing measures. The government is citing a dramatic fall in reported cases after an Omicron-fueled surge, but the mask mandate will remain in place. Other restrictions that will be lifted today include the midnight business curfew and a 10-person cap on the size of gathering. Well, the decision marks the end of 2 years of strict distancing requirements that has seen businesses suffer in the country. Daily cases fell to below 100,000 last week, and that's down from a peak of over 620,000 in mid-March. Back to you guys.
Well, thank you, Adeswa. It's good to see progress being made in South Korea there, and hopefully they're not going to be set back by any fresh outbreaks. With regards to Nicola Sturgeon, I'm sure it will be pointed out that she has been scathing in her criticism of Boris Johnson and his party for their, well-documented and now officially prosecuted COVID breaches. So I'm sure she's going to be called a hypocrite for this lapse of hers. But in her defense, I will say, so far, the evidence shows one occasion, which is quite different from the serial breaches that we saw from Boris Johnson and his party. You know what's been revealed now about that? The latest accusation is that he was not, in fact, sort of wandered into this party situation that he found himself, but that he was actually the person, the ringleader, the party organizer, the rabble-rouser there, which is so damning if at all that ends up being confirmed. And it's looking like there will be other fines coming for Boris Johnson. So we'll see how that goes. And Nicola Sturgeon criticized him at the time. You'll recall Operation Red Meat last year when those allegations first came to the fore. She thought that that was just a diversionary tactic. When all else fails, start talking about refugees and immigrants and, distract attention from what you were doing. She's going to face some of that herself now, unfortunately.
Okay, two quick things. South Korea has a population of 51 million. 86% of that population has been fully vaccinated. The booster exercise, vaccination exercise, has also commenced. But now South Korea says it's going to relax most of those restrictions. South Korea in the last 2 years had a 299 limit, in terms of persons who can attend large events with very strict social distancing rules. But the rationale for this is the same as you will find maybe in Denmark or in the Netherlands or in the UK or elsewhere. That small-scale, businesses have suffered a lot as a result of these restrictions. But that now, with the reduction that you talked about, from a peak of about 620,000 cases of infection to just about 100,000 last week. So South Korea is planning to drop most of those COVID rules so that businesses can open up and the economy can recover, at a much faster rate. So you find that many countries, with perhaps the notable exception of Taiwan, and also, maybe parts of China, where there is a zero COVID policy in place, are trying to open up gradually to get that proper balance between business and, living with COVID. Now, you also talked about, the fact that a research by the University of Toronto is indicating, and that research will be presented later this month at a conference of European Conference of Clinical Microbiologists, that there is a 6% spike during weekends. And that this is not due to reporting lags. This is just because on weekends, over a period of 2 years, because the study covered March 2020 to March 2022, that during weekends, there is a reduction in terms of clinical staffing. And the big lesson from there is that, look, hospitals and relevant authorities should not drop the ball on weekends. Because if you look at the Monday to Friday rates within the period under study, death rate was lower than between, say, Saturday, Sunday to Monday. Yes, so that is the lesson of that. So, and I hope that the relevant authorities will take a look at that. Finally, on Friday, the Nigerian Center for Disease Control issued a report. The key message in that report, as it appears, is that there is lower infection rate among inbound travelers, that is people coming into Nigeria when they are tested, but that there is a sharp increase in the number of people who test positive who are outbound travelers. So decrease on one side, increase on the other side. What does this say to us? I think what it says clearly is that perhaps, we've not paid enough attention, to vaccination in Nigeria. Only about, 12% of the eligible Nigerian population has been vaccinated, either with 1 dose or 2 doses, but inbound travelers coming from other jurisdictions will seem to be reporting decreased cases of infection. But those going out are having increased cases of infection. But as you yourself indicated in a previous report, most of the cases in Africa, in some of these countries, the people are asymptomatic. And, we don't get severe illness. There was a report a few years back that said the Africans have a special shock absorber for all kinds of diseases. And maybe that is what is playing out, this time around also, why, Africa has not turned out to be the predicted, COVID-19 tragedy zone that had been predicted.
So for me, one thing is certain. We have not even done enough work. Let me use the word enough work as regards our vaccination drive. The targets by experts is supposed to be about 40% vaccination if we get through the entire process. But goodness me, we're way down there. We're not even doing anything. For me, correct me if I'm wrong, I think the vaccination drive is as good as dead. Nobody's talking about vaccination any longer. Nobody's pushing so hard. I think in our mind, we think it's all over with COVID. But that's a very, very, very tricky assumption to make. We need to bring vaccination back on the front burner. People need to take J&J. Even if they don't want to go through the 2-dose routine or the 3 or 4-dose routine and the booster, J&J is quick, it's there for them, it will indicate that they've been vaccinated. But the shocking thing is the uptake of that is even slow, it's even small. Can I use the word, the number is minuscule, which is saddening. We should work on that. And I'd like the primary healthcare authorities to do something as regards that, not just, television airtime, but people should be given. You should take it to the people. You should make it more attractive. We should have that final push. If possible, NGOs and, some other establishments around the world should help us. If possible, if it's not a stretch, we could knock out polio because of the great work of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, if they can share with us the strategies they used. And for Nicola Sturgeon, what she did is bad, but I'll defend her, compared to the COVID bonga bonga Boris Johnson had. And that's a reference to the bonga bonga parties of Silvio Berlusconi many years back.
Well, thank you very much, Adesua Omoruan. I hope you had great fun during Easter. You know where I'm going. Anyway.